One thing I loved about this movie is how inclusive it is. We've got heroes and villains who are different genders, different races, different species. And instead of "with great power comes great responsibility," the catchphrase that Sony comes out with is "anyone can wear the mask." Then of course, being Sony, they came off a little desperate. Anyone can wear the mask. You can wear the mask. Please, please buy the mask, buy the costume. We're Sony. All we have is Spider-Man. It's all we've got. Go see Venom again. It wasn't so bad. We made the Emoji Movie. Please help us. So in this fantastic film, Sony basically proved what I always thought about them. To get Spider-Man right, just forget the whole live action thing, or team up with Disney. And I do say that with a tiny bit of respect because yes, there were aspects of those live action Sony Spider-Man films that I did enjoy, but even the Raimi films fizzled. The Web films got tangled, and the Venom film poisoned critics. Whew, tired after that forced pun. The point is, for all of those franchises, whether it was eventually or right off the bat for some, they all forgot the tone that Spider-Man is supposed to be. This character isn't overly brooding. He's not disco dancing down the street during his emo phase. He's supposed to be fun, charismatic, irreverent, at least most of the time. So how do you capture that? Well, you bring in the team that brought us the Lego Movie. A team that's not afraid to mock that stupid disco scene. The catch is, I wish it wasn't just produced by Chris Miller and Phil Lord. I wish it was co-written like the Lego Movie and all the other stuff they've done in the past. But unfortunately, Chris Miller didn't have anything to do with this script. Phil Lord co-wrote it with Rodney Rotham, a guy who sounds like he was named by Stan Lee himself. But the point is, it just kind of wasn't the same. I've come to love the writing team of Miller and Lord ever since Clone High. These guys are hilarious writers. But without Miller on Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, that means it's only half the writing team. So that's okay, right? Well, it actually, for me, meant it was only half the comedy, too. And that, right there, is my only complaint about this movie. That's not even to say it wasn't funny. I just felt, knowing these guys and their sense of humor, it could have been funnier. But the writing is great. There's something for adults, there's something for kids. The plot is very structured and very straightforward. Kingpin is essentially the central villain. He's built a doomsday machine, which, if our group of heroes doesn't stop it and destroy the machine, then of course it will destroy the world. Sounds like you've seen it before, right? Ooh, let's not say things we can't take back. From a writing perspective though, the complexity didn't come in the plot, it came with the characters. And I'm super impressed that 90% of our heroes and villains actually had a backstory. They had motivation, and to give even a handful of those characters a fleshed out backstory and a real fulfilled character, that's quite an accomplishment. With all of these characters comes change, and a great change for the 21st century. And I say this with love in my heart for this character, but Peter Parker, the Great White Hope, is no longer the central Spider-Man. This is not his time, and it's not his story. And I don't think I'm alone in saying, thank God we don't have to see Peter Parker's origin story again. The funny thing is, we may not get Peter Parker's backstory again, yet we get the backstory of all these different Spider-Verse spider people, and it's just enough to actually fall in love with pretty much every single one of these characters, but especially Miles Morales. This is his story, and it's so fresh and rejuvenating to see a different Spider-Man on the big screen. And I love that two of my favorite characters, one obviously being Miles Morales, who's the main character, and one being Spider-Gwen, actually once again gave people who didn't feel that they were necessarily represented in comic book movies a chance to be represented. And I think it's fantastic because we began the year with Black Panther and we end the year with this movie. And I think this is the beginning of a rebirth of comic book films. And with that rebirth, with that diversity, we get to bring in amazing character actors to be the voices of these characters. We couldn't have had Mahershala Ali or Brian Tyree Henry as the Davis brothers if we didn't have the Davis brothers on the screen. And in fact, I love that they cast Zoe Kravitz as Mary Jane. I think that's inspired. Plus, you had a plethora of funny white people. My favorite surprise, though, was that one of my favorite actors voiced Kingpin, and I didn't know this coming into the movie. I was trying to figure it out during the whole movie. It sounded familiar, and yet it wasn't. And it just proves one thing to me. If you want one of the best on-screen comic book villains, you give the role to Liev Schreiber. Even if it's maybe wasted. But I want to end on my favorite aspect of this movie, and you've seen it in trailers, you've seen it in the commercials, was Stan and Steve smiling down on this team of animators, because, my God, the artwork was stunning. It was beautiful, it was creative, it was imaginative, it was so stylized. It was some of the best animation I've seen in a really long time, if not ever. This is the kind of animated film that celebrates the fact that it's animated, character design that isn't physically possible. They even try to mimic the offset printing that almost gives it a 3D effect in some scenes. The color is bright and unrealistic, but the fact is you accept it because you know you're watching an animated film. And so the artwork is for the win, because if it doesn't win the Oscar this year for Best Animated Feature, that's one of the biggest cinematic crimes I've seen in a long time. In short, this is one of my most highly recommended films of the year. What can I say other than it's an earn it? This is the first comic book franchise, if you can call it that, because I'm sure we're gonna get a sequel, that I'm actually excited about, that's trying something new. Not just with the characters, not just with representation, but how they show the comic book film. It's brilliant. You need to go see it. Poll question, who's your favorite Spider person in the Spider-Verse? As always, leave your answer in the comments section below. But until next time, school's out. Hey Real students, thanks for watching. If you want to subscribe to Real School, click that round Real School logo right beside me. Also click that damn notification bell so you're aware of all of Real School's new content. You can follow me on Twitter, and of course, if you get anything out of Real School, you can always give a little back. Just click the link in the description below or the button down there, and you can become part of my Patreon team.